Hey guys, how are you doing? If you're watching this in the last few days coming up to paper 2, which is on Monday the 17th of June, you are so nearly there. Well done. I know it's been a long old shift with your A-levels, and hopefully for many of you this will be your last one. So let's finish strong. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm just going to take you through what to expect with paper 2. This is a little bit different than paper 1 because it's got dialogues questions. So quite a lot of the video is going to focus on that, but hopefully there'll be useful tips in there in general. The only thing I would say is I have done this video from the point of view of Christianity because that is the religion that most people study. If you haven't done Christianity, if you've done a different religion, this might make less sense, but hopefully there'll still be some tips that you can use for dialogues, incorporating whichever religion it is that you have studied. So let's go. All right, I'll start with my usual tips. Hopefully you're absolute pros at exams now, but sleeping, eating, hydrating, exercising, general self-care, that's super important. I did notice before paper 1, when I woke up in the morning, there were people who'd been commenting on my videos at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Not the best idea, that's not healthy. When we're that close to the exam, you need the sleep more than you need the revision at that point. So be sensible with yourselves. When you're in the exam, read the questions several times. This is the paper where you get an element of choice on the dialogues. So it's worth having a couple of reads of the questions. Don't make that decision too quickly. Give yourself a minute. Another thing to give yourself a minute on is planning. And I'll say more about that when we get to that part. And just keep a close eye on the time. The timings are very, very similar to paper 1. So for the Christianity questions or the religion questions, the timings are exactly the same as paper 1. And then for dialogues, it works out to 45 minutes per dialogue. So here's the structure. You get 2 10 markers on Christianity and 2 15 markers on Christianity. If you've done a different religion, it will be on that religion. There's no choice with those. You have to do those, okay? Just like for paper 1, no choice. But there, when you do get a choice, is in dialogues. So there will be 2 philosophy dialogues and 2 ethics dialogues. You pick one of each. Super, super important that you don't do both philosophy or both ethics. It's one of each, okay? Now the skills that they're looking for here, you probably know this, so I apologise if I'm repeating it, but it's worth hearing multiple times. AO1 is knowledge and understanding, that's assessed in 10 markers. AO2 is evaluation, that's assessed in 15 markers. Dialogues, they are assessing both, but there isn't a separate combined mark scheme or levels of response for dialogues. It's marked in exactly the same way as your 10s and 15s are, and I'll explain more about that. So what I've got here, and you can pause the video for a second if you want to have a little bit more of a detailed read of this, but hopefully it's something you're familiar with already. These are the levels of response. I haven't gone right the way down to the bottom because it wouldn't fit on the slide, but you've got on the left hand side AO1, on the right hand side AO2. The way that dialogues is marked is the marker will read the entire essay. They'll give it a mark out of 10 for knowledge and understanding based on assigning it a level. They'll do the same for the evaluation. They'll add those 2 together and that's your mark for the dialogues essay. Okay, so the thing about that is that's no different than marking a 10 and a 15. And I've been saying all year to my students, if you can do a 10 and you can do a 15, you can do a 25, you can do a dialogues. It's just a case of putting them together. So I've said what to expect on this. I actually wouldn't expect any of these questions because all of these are past questions or on the specimen papers. So it won't be these, but this is the sort of thing that dialogues questions tend to look like. So let's have a look at some of them. So that's an ethics one, comparing Christianity and virtue ethics applied to voluntary euthanasia. Here we've got Christian ideas of moral responsibility have been undermined by the understandings of the nature of free will. So we're comparing free will and determinism, that topic, with Christian ideas of moral responsibility. Now that could be good conduct and key moral principles. It could be Christian ethics in general. Nice one there, that's off one of the specimen papers. Christian ethics is deontological. And then we've got some philosophy ones. Miracles do not happen. Now that could easily have been a 15 marker for miracles, but it could work as a dialogues too, because miracles are obviously really central in Christianity. Religious experience gives Christians knowledge of God. Christian understandings of God are undermined by the problem of evil. So I've tried to do a mix there to show you the sort of statements that you might get to work with. And what they will look like on the paper in terms of a question structure is they'll look like this. So you get your statements, and then the instructions will be critically examine and evaluate this claim with reference to the dialogue between Christianity and philosophy or Christianity and ethics. Now just look really, really, really carefully if it's an ethics question that they're not asking for a specific scholar. So I do remember one year on one paper it was with reference to the dialogue between Christianity and Bentham's ethics. So it could be between Christianity and Kant's ethics. I've not known them do that with philosophy, but that doesn't mean that they absolutely couldn't, I guess. So that's what to look for. How to be successful? I would say the best tip I can give you is select what you're going to use. You are never going to need everything for a dialogues. So you need to include AO1 and AO2, but there's not a formula for how much of each. You've got 45 minutes to do each one. That's quite a long time to be writing. So it may be worth spending 2 or 3 of those doing a little plan, particularly if you know that you're someone who struggles to keep on track or kind of goes off on trains of thought that aren't necessarily helpful. What they're looking for here is, can you look at the whole course and make links between different things? So you'll need to draw on material from across the course and make links between Christianity and philosophy and Christianity and ethics. And to get a goodly number of AO2 marks, you've got to have an overall conclusion. Otherwise, you're going to be quite limited on your 15 mark band. Structure is something people worry about a lot with dialogues. I don't think you need to worry too much because AQA have said multiple times that they do not expect to see any particular structure. So there isn't a formula for doing these. I found a way that I think works well, but just because it works well for me doesn't necessarily mean it will work well for you. What I tend to do is almost treat it as a big 15 marker. So I'm writing like I would for a 15 marker. I'm evaluating, I'm critiquing. But in a dialogue, what I would do that I wouldn't do in a 15 marker is I'm going to explain the concepts that I'm talking about. And that's where my 10 marks is going to come from. But to get the 15 as well, you need an argument that leads logically or reasonably to the conclusion that you're going to draw. And the conclusion has got to be related to the statement. Hopefully that's obvious. So around your arguments, I would put explanations of the ideas you're using, explain your concepts, unpack them a little bit, and that's where you get your 10 marks. And like I said before, they don't go through and tick things and say, that's a mark, and that's a mark, and that's a mark. It doesn't work like that. They read the whole thing, they give it a level, and then within the level, they give it a mark. They'll do that for AO1, AO2, and add them together. Another way to do it, which is completely legitimate, is you can do all your explanations first. So, in other words, the 10 mark content, and then you can go ahead and do your evaluation. Now, like I said, that's legit. I don't find that works particularly well for me because it doesn't feel natural, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. You can do it that way if you want to. So let me tell you a little bit more about my approach, which I think can work quite well. And if you want to see this, how I've done it, I have done some videos of some dialogues model answers where I talk you through some of my essays. So please do check out those videos if it would help. So I would take the integrated approach. So what this looks like, maybe per paragraph, is I'll start the paragraph by explaining an idea and then I'll evaluate it. So the first maybe third of my paragraph will be explanation, and then the second 2/3 will be evaluation. That way I'm getting AO1 and AO2 in. It's okay to use phrases like I think, I find this convincing, I don't find this convincing, I think this is a strong argument, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Some subjects don't like you to use those. In RS, it's fine, and I've checked that with AQA. You can also use rhetorical questions. These can be quite good for AO2. So you can put rhetorical questions like, surely this doesn't work, or surely there's a weakness here because blah, blah, blah. Some people really like introductions. I don't really, because the trouble with an introduction is you might end up just waffling and not really getting any marks. I think rather than investing time in an introduction, I would get straight into it and spend that time on a conclusion, because a conclusion is more likely to get you marks. And then finally, just a little bit on planning. Make a quick plan before you start. Decide what you want to include, and remember that you're not going to need everything. So it's important that you choose stuff that's going to help you. This is not one of those times where you want to just write down everything you know. Think about what you want your argument to be, and try and think, where do you want your conclusions to go as well. Also think about the different areas of the course that you can draw from. This is where people start to go wrong, because Christian views, people sometimes think, oh, well, that's just what we did in Christianity lessons. It isn't. Particularly for ethics, it's much broader than that. So natural moral law, situation ethics, divine command theory, even though you did them in ethics lessons, they're all Christian views. So it's totally legit to use those in dialogues to make Christian points of view. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So this video is going up on Wednesday, exam is Monday. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try and answer as many as I can. But you're nearly there. You've put in a great shift. Be proud of yourselves. Let's finish strong on the last one. Well done, guys.